right, welcome everyone. Hello, Internet, to a Silverline show on Tuesday. My first time seeing the new intro, legally distinct from Marvel. I see by maybe 2 octaves.
I love that music. It's like I want to go out there and march.
Yeah,
Let's go. All right.
It's good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Okay.
Well, we got our names. Well, actually, mine was the one that was actually correct before. So
Yeah, no, I look good. Thank you, Pops. This one I think is better. Yeah. But I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined as always by Ron Fortier,
Howdy, everybody.
Brent Larson,
Hello, everybody.
and David Rios.
hello.
All right. And we are going to be talking about how weird is too weird. This is something I've talked about before in what's considered your role planning or your pre-writing process, the concept called the triangle of weird. The idea that if something is so ungrounded, your audience can't relate to it unless you go beyond and come back around. But you can find ways to balance your weirdness and your groundedness to make something that is weird yet relatable. And that's how we get things like The Matrix. But yeah, before we get into tonight's show, we do have some housekeeping. Let me make sure my sharing is set up correctly. All right, we're going to go over here to Cape Town. Perfect. All right. We do have a thing currently on my comic called Cape Town Number 2. This is a classic weird team comic kind of deal, but with a fun little twist on it. The covers are sick, and of course our pricing is as the same as usual, which is entirely reasonable. And again, you're not backing some pipe dream that's never going to get made. This is a book that's ready to go to print, and you're just placing the pre-order in a way that is easy for us to track and ship. And we got our sweet original art as well. A lot of it has already been picked up, so if you want to get some, you're going to want to get in soon and grab what's available before that also goes. Of course, if we get enough demand, we might add more. And I think we have 2 people on here that we have some strong connections with. Of course, Brent Larson, currently existing in front of you. And J.W. Franklin, who's also worked on Wolf Hunter. Same with Mike Belcher. So, Brent, why don't you tell us a little bit about Cape Town?
Sure. This is the second issue. Basically, the setup is it all takes place in a city where people just like to cosplay as superheroes. So it's not crazy to see people running all over town like superheroes. And the history of the town was a few years ago, a few of the cosplayers started to emerge who actually had powers. And they got together and they were superheroes and everything was great. And then over a short period of time, they all disappeared. And everyone thought the whole era was over and they moved on. Until when our story begins, which is 2 superheroes emerge at the same time, and they have one question on their minds: what happened to all the heroes that disappeared? And they don't know each other. They meet each other in issue 1, and true to comic book form, they don't like each other. When heroes meet each other for the first time, what is it? They just don't like each other. So I explore that a little bit, but really, as they pursue this mystery, I wouldn't call this a deconstruction of superhero comics. Frankly, I'm a little tired of deconstruction. What I do enjoy seeing is taking what you think is a lived-in trope or a series of tropes and just turning it a little bit on its head and making it feel a little bit newer. So that was my intention. We'll see if I actually succeeded or not.
So instead of serving the sandwich split open and all its parts set aside, what you did is just took the sandwich and then replaced the bread with donuts.
You know, sure. Actually, that doesn't sound half bad to me right now. In my low carb existence, yes, I'm hoping these donut high carb analogies work for you. So
Perfect. So if you want to help Brent get some donuts, go ahead and head over to Fund My Comic and place your pre-order on Cape Town #2. And maybe on Brent's social media, he'll share with us an update on whether or not he gets donuts once the campaign is complete.
Yeah, sure. Why?
Yeah. And if you're ever in Bend, Oregon, go to a place called J-Dubs where they serve a burger on donuts. Anyway.
Whoa.
Sweet and savory and kind of nasty.
It's very, very sticky. You have to eat like the same, like, after eating wings, you have to use like the moist towelette.
Right.
It's a burger where after eating, you have to use a moist towelette. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now I can't stop thinking about it.
There we go. Okay. And we do have some non-Silverline related, but definitely the show related showing to do, which, by the way, if you're going to get any comic, make sure you get both. We have Brother Bones, Origin 1 from Mr. Ron Fortier, also on Kickstarter.
Yeah, that launched Friday afternoon. And it's the first chapter of a 4-part graphic novel telling the origin of Brother Bones. Bones is really a former mob hitman named Tommy Bonello. He's one of two. Well, he's a identical twin. He and his brother Jack were brought up on the streets of Cape Noir, this fictional city on the northwest coast. And when they were 13, they kept getting into trouble enough that the local mob boss, a guy named Topper Weil, had them picked up and basically became their mentor. And so they grow up in the mob. And as the story opens up, they're two of the most lethal killers in Cape Noir, and pretty much feared by everybody, including other mob, personnel, both, the cops and the criminal element in town. Ultimately, what happens is something happens to Tommy that pushes him across the line. He actually develops something that he never thought was possible, and that's a conscience. And basically, to shut him up, worried that he's a liability, Topper sends his brother Jack to take him out. In the course of all of that happening, Tommy's killed, but he doesn't go to hell. Instead, he's caught in some kind of bizarre spiritual limbo and told that he can't go to any final rest until he makes atonement for all the evil he's committed in the course of his young life, and is sent back down, but now as this undead corpse, which basically is Brother Bones, the undead avenger. And so now he becomes the great protector of Cape Noir, again, basically facing off against his own brother and the people that brought him up. The fun of this thing, the conceit of this thing to me was basically wanting to riff off the old pulps like the Shadow and the Spider and those kind of characters, but adding the horror element to that. And as I was writing it, I found myself, envisioning all those early 1940s Universal monster movies, which is what, ultimately Bones becomes. And there are other denizens, believe me, as you get into the bigger story, there are other bizarre, weird denizens in Cape Noir. He's not the only one. The kicker is we're playing off that, and it's like a merger between a Universal horror movie and a 1940s Warner Brothers gangster movie with Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and Edward G. Robinson. So it's monsters meet gangsters. And that's the conceit of Brother Bones. Tim, if you can play that little video at all, you'd probably get a kick out of that. It's a little short animation. It lasts like maybe 15 seconds.
Okay. You won't get any audio in the stream, I don't think.
But that's Cape Noir. They're the brothers, Jack and Tommy. And the Rise of Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger. That's one of the alternate covers by Rob Davis, and that's the primary A cover by Joe Arnold, who is the primary artist on the entire graphic novel.
Awesome. Okay, well, like I said, make sure to pick up both comics as you're shopping this week. Both are running for a little bit longer. But yeah, a wild take on Purgatory, I imagine. But there we go, perfect. Okay. So yes, we have cosplayers turned real and Purgatory turns wild. But I hope you enjoy both those. So make sure to head on over to
Hey, support the independents. Support
Yes.
the independents, please.
Over to Kickstarter and Fund My Comic, and make sure to place an order for both of those comics. Like I said, with Cape Town, it is a fully completed book, so not. You know, there's another book right next to it that I'm not going to say names, but it's been on the front page of Fund My Comic for quite some time now. And surprise, surprise, the book hasn't come out yet. We're not that company. Ron, is your book also complete, or is it close to completion?
Oh no, it's complete. Issue number 1 is complete, and we're talking pretty much 40 pages for $10. I think that's a steal.
That's a good deal, yeah. Okay. Well, getting into tonight's topic, how weird is too weird? So to preface this, I've mentioned before that there is something that gets taught in genre writing classes now. The idea of the rule of weird, and that it's not really like a hard and fast rule, as with many rules in writing. The art form comes in learning how to break things. The classic example, Stephen King saying the road to hell is paved with adverbs, and then if you're reading any of his books, there's quite a decent amount of adverbs. It's just, you have to find where to place them. So when you talk about the rule of weird, there's a concept that if something is too out there, it becomes unrelatable in a way that it does not connect to the audience. And makes it harder for it to perform well as for it to, be received well. I think of the book Aloha, which is too weird in all three categories in ways that don't work out well, and it just kind of falls apart and hard to read. But if you find a way to get weird in one or two sections, but stay grounded in another, you provide a great point for the audience to relate, to understand, to build context, and then go on from there. To use a popular example that I think fits this really well, you got something like A Clockwork Orange, right? A seemingly unapproachable book, but one that is beloved by writers and general audiences for different reasons, and it even got turned into a well-received movie. And it is, you have the things where you have characters, settings, and premise, right? So you have a really weird setting. Yeah, it's like, but not really. But it's this near future London that is kind of abstracted in weird places, but not so much. You have characters that are seemingly relatable because they are just rambunctious teens, even though they speak a little weird English. And the premise is the same thing as, Stand By Me, rambunctious teens going out and doing rambunctious things and getting into trouble. And so you end up getting this thing where it's really weird in one area, but it kind of grounded in other areas, so it makes it easily, as a reader, you can kind of engage with the weird stuff and not fall out of context with it. And so we're not necessarily exploring like how to make something too weird tonight, even though that's a fun experiment, because if we purposely tell you how to make something bad, what good are we doing? But exploring kind of our own engagement with media, how we push things and make things weird and push them to the limit, but don't necessarily fall away from things.
You basically, Tim, you keep pushing up against the whole point about is too weird to me is anything goes. That's too weird. Anything goes. Okay? I mean, just knock down the walls and run like hell. Okay? I mean, follow your bare ass through the cornfield. Let's go. Okay? I grew up through the 50s in American comics. And let me tell you, if you want to describe a decade as too weird, it would be the 50s. All right? Because, I mean, basically, if Superman's running around with an apron being scolded by Lois Lane because he got married, and then the next issue, Jimmy Olsen turns into a giant turtle boy. Batman's dealing with, Batmite. Ooh, Batmite. Man, that is just awesome. That's just great. Come on. Every other month, there was something bizarro. I mean, there you go. Let's have a character who's the doppelganger of Superman, but he's bizarro. Oh, totally. All right. And that's what the 50s were all about. They were just about weird comics.
Yeah.
And it was no holes barred. Anything went. All right. And hallelujah, Stan Lee and Kirby came along in the 60s, because I doubt seriously we'd have comics today if they hadn't put on the brakes and said, okay, guys, enough's enough here. Okay. I mean, yeah, sure, we're doing comics. Sure, we're exaggerating to the max, all this good stuff. But yeah, let's rein it in a little bit. Let's have a little bit of storytelling while we're here, maybe a little bit of angst along the way, right? And that's what Kirby and Lee did with the premiere of Marvel Comics, and started shifting it around, because basically it was a case of, I remember myself. I mean, I'm 11, 12, 13, this age group, and I'm almost at the verge of just giving up on comics altogether with this ridiculousness. All right, except again, look at the variety. Except for the Western comics that were published in those days, and there were a slew of those, which were really a lot of fun. And there were gangster comics, there were Robin Hood, Knights of Old, and whatever. And the superhero trope was the one going off the cliff, and pretty much on its way to kaput. All right, it continued in this strain of bizarro, weird comics.
Yeah, I think kind of like as you're talking, like to continue on what you said there, I think Stan Lee kind of also really hit the nail on the head with this whole concept when he talked about how, like, the idea for Spider-Man, right, is that they wanted to do another superhero comic, and he fought to have the idea of, well, it should be a kid with real life issues who's also a superhero, right? And that's the drama. The grounding issue is the drama of Peter Parker dealing with school kid stuff, and then also having to be a superhero on the side of that. And so you get this grounding factor that reins in the weirdness of radioactive spiders and shooting webs from wrists. I think actually, not to keep on the shilling train, but I mean, that's what we're going to do. Brother Bones, I think, is also a really good example of this. Is that it's we're keeping it, the setting is somewhat grounded. The premise is weird, right? It's more or less a noir style Revenant, right? It's a really cool mythological idea, but the characters are semi fantastical because they're fictionalized mobsters, but they're still not too far out there. And so you get this really cool idea of we have our grounding points to make it relatable, to get an understanding, to get into the premise, and then from there the premise can get into the weird stuff.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, to me, when you look back on hindsight and again, you mentioned Spider-Man, and it wasn't until years later that, you open your eyes to the realization that I mean, I'm 13 years old reading Spider-Man and identifying with him spot on immediately. And up until that point, there was no other superhero that was a kid superhero who had those kind of nerdy, problems in school and high school, the same kind of things that I was living through. Exactly. All right. So I think that up until that time, I think the only other real kid hero had been Billy Batson, but he wasn't really the hero. It was only when he became the adult Captain Marvel. So here you go. You ground it in this teenage boy with all these problems. And Lee just basically plays to the general audience who was buying the comics in those days. Boom, nailed it square on. It's no surprise that was a huge hit, and away it went. But let's keep the fantastical idea going with all this, okay? There becomes this shift with Lee and Marvel of making comics a little more grounded, okay, keeping the sensationalism, the bizarro stuff in check now, all right, and trying to maybe reach a more mature audience. I mean, you've got your 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds on, all of a sudden they're 17, 18 going on to college. Well, let's not lose them. Let's keep them, all right? So you keep amping this adult themes, all right, social themes, all right? And the folks over in Marvel had to give up all the Batmites and the Mr. Mitsaplex and all this good stuff if they wanted to stay in competition to make a buck. So they started getting grounded. And then you've got, you're dealing with themes of drugs and whatever. So much so that ultimately the pendulum swings this entire other way to the point of, well, comics have to be relevant. Comics have to be mature. They have to hit, deep thoughts and again, like I said, social commentary, all this good stuff. 20, 30 years of this, all right? And what do? They literally leave behind that little kid's audience.
Yeah.
Yep. Without a second thought of it. All right. Oh, wait. We really don't need them. Right. Okay. Oh, yeah, right. To the point where you get to like the end of the 70s, early 80s, and along come these two kids working in a pizza parlor in Dover, New Hampshire, who basically unleash on the world these radiated turtles who do kung fu and make $1 million. All right. It's just when you watch the whole social strata of comics and their ups and downs, all right, it's just Lee and Kirby set a trend, but they created a vacuum at the same time. And we have a sense, and I think you'll agree, Tim, there's a part of us enjoying comics that we want some of that silliness.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do want some of it. Don't get rid of all of it. All right. I mean, that was the basic appeal of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, they just played to that absurd weirdness. And kids loved it because kids weren't getting it. Kids were having to deal with, Green Arrow and Green Lantern traveling across America, seeing America, and, again, a 60-minute documentary comic book, all right? When kids just wanted a little zap, powie, and let's go get a pizza.
Yeah. And that's, I mentioned before on the show that I think one of the few members of Silverline that still actively buys from Marvel and DC their current runs. But I'm very selective with what I buy because there's a point of, I do want some things to cover, some like be a little deeply, be a little like political or whatever, but I also want my fun. Like, I love the way that Green Lantern has always been handled because Green Lantern is space cops.
There you go.
And they stay true to that premise. I don't want to glaze too much of do too much glazing for modern writing, but I will glaze Matt Fraction until he finally follows me back on Blue Sky. But Matt Fraction, who I loved his run on Hawkeye, has started a run on Batman for DC. And Batman is this character who has done that exact same pendulum scene so many times of going from being too lighthearted to too dark to too lighthearted to too dark and kind of back and forth. But he's a really interesting character because he should be someone who exists kind of this area of, he's a little jaded, yes, he's a little, like he calls himself vengeance, and so he's maybe a little too militaristic at times. But there is a point of him that hopes that the villains that he's fighting can be saved. That's the reason why he doesn't kill people. He puts them into a medical facility to try and get them help. Like he's a character that should have some lighthearted nature, just behind this veneer. And so Matt Fraction's first issue of Batman, spoilers for new comic, I guess. Can you really spoil a comic now? I don't know. All the pages already put up in previews before the comic even hits shelves. But you have this moment where he sits down, where Crocodile breaks out of Arkham, and Batman's like, I gotta put down Crocodile again. Like, he's just gonna go on a rampage. And instead, and you do get some action, you get some fighting, but because it's a comic, you need to have fighting. What are we doing? Mm-hmm. But you have this moment where Crocodile is sitting in a museum looking at the dinosaur exhibit and saying, like, that's me, I'm a monster. And so what does Bruce do? He turns off his electromagnetic gloves, pulls off his cowl, and says, Croc, you're kind of a monster, so am I. That's okay. Like, I worked through it. And you have this moment where Croc goes willingly back to Arkham because he has to sit down with Bruce. I'm like, that is Bruce Wayne. That is the character. It is this moment of, you should have some darkness, but also there is hope behind a comic, right? That's right. I've said this before on a tweet a while ago. Like, the reason why I want to write comics is I want to put some little bit of hope out into the world. And
please. All right. Yeah. What do you want for your legacy? I read his comic books and I wanted to shoot myself in the head. No. Heaven forbid. All right, come on. Jeez. They when they were created, they were called funny books. Let's not forget that. Jeez. Huh? So what do you think of all this, Dave? The weird comics.
I've enjoyed a lot of weird comics, a lot of weird comic characters. Some personal favorites being Lobo.
Please, yes.
Yes.
And why am I blanking on his last name? Marshall, British comic. I haven't read him. Not Judge Dredd. Martial Law.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I loved a lot of the stuff. I loved a lot of the references and the pokes that he would do. Like, in one of the books, you see Batman holding Robin's shoulder. It's a statue. And then over the course of the thing, the statue falls over. And now Robin's on the ground and Batman statue's on top of him, and that's like, what's going on? And it's just a lot of the stuff that they poked fun with, a lot of the different things and how extreme, and the fact that he is a superhero that is a superhero hunter. It's the ironic. He is the main thing that he is truly hates in life, and so there's a lot of the weird stuff, and I like a lot of the a lot of the fantasy stuff. That's one of the weird things that I loved about Mage was the Grackle Flints. These little midgets with big feet, red beanies, and teeth sticking out. They had so much personality and all that stuff. So a lot of the weird stuff, I felt that the stuff I gravitated towards was more of the independent weird. I didn't gravitate to things like Plastic Man or any of those that are supposed to be kind of weird. So So that's my take on it. And forgive me, I have a cat that really wants attention right now.
No, that's weird for cats. It kind of to follow up on immediately on that, and then I'll pass it over to Brent to talk about some stuff. But I didn't gravitate towards Plastic Man until more recent iterations. Actually, like when he first got introduced, to Bronze Age, Silver Age type stuff. I felt like he was just kind of like this weird out there character that didn't contribute much more than either to be a punchline or to do something to save the show in the nick of time. With more recent stuff, where the Terrifics run, where Plastic Man, yes, he's a weird, goofy guy who breaks the fourth wall and stretches himself into weird shapes. But also, he is a father who was forced away from his kid for 15 years and is now trying to reconnect after being held captive in the dark dimension. And so you get this cool storyline of an estranged father trying to reconnect with his son and build a relationship with his ex-wife. And like, that's a lot of drama that you can do a lot of really good, heartfelt storytelling with. And then you will juxtapose that with Plastic Man is now a van driving Mr. Terrific into a building. But it's that point of like, you ground it, right? You give it a little bit of grounding. So, Brent, when you are working on Cape Town, a weird... Yes.
I mean, hey, look, I'm a kid at heart. I mean, I'm in a Walmart like 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm walking through the toy section, and I see this thing, right? I mean, $9. Come on, all right, that's it. Been sitting on my shelf ever since. All right, perfect. I love plastic. Oh yeah, all right.
Absolutely. Brent, so with Cape Town, you already kind of talked about the start of the show, but it is this same idea of you have a super setting where the setting is almost one of the more grounded parts of it, right? It's the idea that these aren't really necessarily superheroes for most part. These are people who cosplay a lot, who like the idea of superheroes. And then introduce some weird characters who do have these powers. And then the premise goes into the, superpowered abduction and disappearance and all this fun stuff. Mm-hmm. So, as I've mentioned in other episodes, when you're creating something, we don't necessarily actively think about the rules of writing, because if we do, we get way too up our own butts and it turns into us aping ourselves. But when you are working on this idea, what parts of are you thinking about this is just a really fun, wacky idea, I'm going to run with it, or this is a good place to put in some grounded drama, or how's that balance work out for you?
Well, that's a good question, because I think, what's funny is when we talk about weirdness, kind of what Ron was saying, when things got really weird in the 50s, you almost feel like the creators kind of lost their way because they weren't interested in telling stories anymore.
Yeah.
Even when Marvel kind of reset everything with the idea of we can actually put real life problems, They had problems in the 50s in their comics and in the 40s and whatever. Maybe they weren't totally relatable, but at least they had problems. But when they started leaning into things like Batmite and all this and that, you almost get this idea that they're saying the people who buy our comics don't really want stories. They want to be titillated by something that's new and funky and what's, I think, I still see some of that today, and frankly, I'm just so not interested, because I can tell when someone is trying to convince me that their book is weird and I should buy it because weird is interesting. But I don't buy it. Literally, I don't buy it, and I also don't buy it theoretically, because the fact is, I don't need to absorb someone's idea of what weird is. But if they have something they want to tell me in a story, then I'll listen to it, even if they have a different political persuasion, even if they have a different religious persuasion, if they have it, but they still want to tell me something in the form of a story. I will read it. I will judge it on its merits based on if it's thematically sound, or if the characters are interesting, or whatever. But if someone's just being weird because they think weird sells, yeah, no thanks. But in answer to your question, when what's funny is, for me, I hope I don't alienate any viewers, but for me, cosplay is kind of weird. It is literally people who go to it's kind of weird that people put so much effort into trying to look like a fictional character, and then they'll go to a convention and people will just eat this stuff up, and it's like they've created a mini society something that I am not a part of, and I can actually only look at it from the outside and think, wow, that costume looks like they must have put 100, 200, 3 hours into building that thing. And I don't know. I'm just like, that is really something. At best, I'll wear a superhero T-shirt, and that costs me $15 in no time at all. These people are driven by something else. So in a way, I'm already
There you go.
There you go.
exactly. And of course, we've seen Rocketeer costumes, and there's some people are like, I'll just put it the night before. I'll put some cardboard box together and make myself look like the Rocketeer. But then there's some people who literally get home from their from a convention and start working on their costume for the next one. Maybe not those, but in my mind, that's weird. But then it makes me ask myself, why do people want to do that? What are they looking for? How are they different from me? How is what I'm looking for the same as what they're looking for, only I'm doing it a different way? And suddenly weirdness isn't so weird anymore. It's compelling. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for weirdness in comics. I'm looking for something that's different, but it's compelling. And when I can actually, by me paying attention, or frankly, just by me making a connection that's very fortunate for me, if I can put that into a story, then I'm like, okay, I think this can work. That's why I'm with you. Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye was great, but it was also weird because suddenly I'm looking at a character I'd never looked at that way before. He's not the superhero who, he's really great at firing bows and arrows, and everyone thinks that he should be, next to Iron Man, who can level cities. And no, Matt Fraction's version was him just being like, yeah, I know it's dumb. And yet that's all I know how to do. So I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that starts out as a weird pitch, but by the time you're done, people are like, I absolutely have to read that comic book. He's saying something. It's compelling. That takes it out of the realm of weird and into something that I can't miss. So that's the goal, I think.
Yeah, let's. Actually, the owner of my local comic shop, or Mega Frog, we were talking about this earlier because I was going to bring him some comic materials. But we're saying that whether it's independent or big 2 or big 3 or wherever you're working at, the key difference is going to be: are you actually contributing something meaningful in this content? Because even it's possible to make a bad independent comic. It's possible that if you make a great independent comic, but you don't necessarily want have the ideas or the design that you want to contribute to, one of the big 2, you just get hired on to do some work for hire stuff. You're just gonna make another kind of forgettable run on Hulk or Iron Man. But if you have someone who like Jed McKay or James Tynion, who's had this idea rattling on or Matt Fraction on a lot of his cases, where you have this idea rattling around in your head for a long time, and then you finally get the opportunity to create it, that's when you can say, this is something different from the rest of all the other offerings of Marvel right now. This is something that's a notch above everything else Marvel's offering. And it's come to that same idea, are you doing an actual, are you using the weird as a capsule for actual good storytelling? And so it's that same idea of, you can push the weird full circle, and if you purposely make the decision of I'm gonna make this character so unrelatable that it's going to become a fan favorite, you create Lobo. So I'm going to create a alien bounty hunter who has no empathy, no remorse, and is just there to beat up your favorite people. All right, we have decided to select a weird in every box.
But what's weird too, and I use the word weird intentionally.
Yeah,
Lobo really came to ascendancy in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't. What was weird is everything about him was weird except when he debuted, which made him the least weird character coming out. Yes, he had no empathy. Yes, he liked beating up superheroes. Why? Well, probably because we were entering a period of comics where people were kind of tired of superheroes.
Yeah.
Superman dies. Okay. People vote to kill Robin. I mean, this was the 90s, and people were like, we actually would appreciate a character who, Guy Gardner. I can't think of a less appealing character in comics. And yet people loved him. And it's like, it was if
Look, somebody explained to me the appeal of Deadpool, because I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't. From the moment that character walked up and this guy can't die. All right. I mean, that's his thing. He can't die. Big freaking deal. All right. Breaks the fourth wall all the time. Drives me crazy. All right. And then I turn around and look, and it's like he has this following that's insane. People love Deadpool. Okay. There is a weird appeal gene out there someplace that people are missing today. All right. And gravitate to it. It's obvious.
Yeah. I think also to Ron's point there, actually, the Deadpool phenomenon is something I can thought about a lot, because the things I talk about a lot is Marvel nearly killing comics in the 90s and then having to be resuscitated by the anti-hero line of stories. And it wasn't just people wanting hyper violence. It was a point of what we're saying. It was we wanted the sacred cow barbecue. It was the idea of with Deadpool. It was the idea of, okay, what if we made a hero that was the polar opposite of everything Captain America and Wolverine were? But we then also we create that, we get the shock factor. And then we reel back in because it's also a guy dealing with cancer and a missing daughter. You're like, oh crap, okay, I guess I care about him emotionally to some extent, but also I want to see him punch Cyclops. Because at this point, this is before Cyclops gets good in Utopia, and he's just kind of being weird whiny boy. Because we had really good Cyclops in the 80s, bad Cyclops in the 90s, excellent Cyclops early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Good Cyclops was on the TV show in the 90s. And then same with Venom. Venom to that extent. We had this cool thing where he has a cool suit and then he's a cool villain. And then what happens in the 90s? We get Anti-Venom and then Agent Venom and Soldier Venom. And this idea of okay, well, what's happening? And what's the idea of, you have these characters who have felt powerless for so long, get the ability to do so, and now they're dealing with this power is actively corrupting them. And so you get the storyline of power corrupts. You get the audience insert of, I wish I had the power to change things in my life. Okay, but what would you be willing to give up? What would your struggle be? And so... Yeah, and
in comics.
Who knew? But the other anti-heroes at that time just kind of got thrown around or tossed around because they weren't made as compelling vehicles to behold, and their compelling stories to behold in that vehicle.
I don't know. I'm probably a minority here, but I never was a big fan of the whole Lethal Protector, Venom, whatever. I mean, I enjoyed Venom when he was created. He was there to torment Peter Parker. I know McFarlane supposedly made him to just house the suit so he could go back to the traditional red and blue, but he was enjoyable. He was a villain. He'd pop up. He had everything could be a weakness for Peter Parker. You could sense him, all that stuff. Great. And then they turned him into the Lethal Protector. And then they go, oh, well, people want a bad one, so let's now make Carnage to replace with it. Why not just, in my opinion, just leave him as he is? You can keep the villain motif and expand on the character and really go into things, but I've just seen too many bad guys turn into good guys that it kind of cheapens the effect of the character. And I know a lot of people are going to argue with that just because, they love the Venom movies, Tom Hardy stuff, and they love the comics and all that. But yeah, it's the whole thing with him originally driven purpose, mean, evil. When he did the Black Cat, what he did to Mary Jane, all that stuff. It's like that was the stuff that built a great character, and then the wave of the 90s came in and let's make everybody an anti-hero, and there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still selling books, so I guess they made the right move, but I would have preferred the other direction. So.
And that's also something you have to accept when you're writing weird or genre stories, is that you're not going to appeal to everyone. Like, the rule is if you write a book for everyone, you've written a book for no one. And so that's the same thing where, like, Dave doesn't like the Venom, Ron doesn't like Deadpool, and that's even though, like, that's not incorrect. Like, that's a preference they can have, and like they can, if you like if you only like Vertigo books and don't like DC, have you been to therapy this week? But also that's something you can do. You're allowed to do that. So that's the whole thing of like, yeah, we can, And so when we're making these decisions as creatives to how are we going to inject weird things, it becomes all that more important to appeal to the weird that we like, because you want to be passionate about what you're creating, because if you're trying to appeal to the weird that the market's liking, it's going to come off like the Eternals movie.
Okay.
I mean, I still thought the traitor was neat, because if you're an Eternals fan, you're like, Dresden's not the traitor, it's Achilles has not been done. But no one else, like the general audience who has no idea who these characters are, like, okay.
Yeah. Opportunity missed. Oh well.
Yeah, and they put a lot of talent. I mean, they put a lot of big name stars in those positions, and they were so underutilized for what they were. So,
Angelina Jolie was in there for like 15 minutes and made one facial expression. Also, hello, Roku.
It just, I don't know. It just seemed like, it was the mass exodus where becoming, a Marvel actor was cool, and a lot of the people wanted to get in it, and a lot of them had interest in the comics, but a lot of them didn't. It's just the hot thing to do and get signed up for multiple movies and all that. But it all comes down to what they do with you and how the story's written, and the potential, using the potential that's there to the fullest. So unfortunately, that movie didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like to draw a comparison, to compare that to something like Gunn's Superman or the Thunderbolts movie, where these writers had these ideas in their heads for a while, and like, I want to tell a story that captures this emotional part of these characters, right? We got a movie that explores the juxtaposition of like depression that exists within Sentinel, Bob, right? Sentry. Like, that is a comic book movie about relying on a support network to overcome depression and suicidal thoughts. Like, fantastic. And then I'm so afraid for what's going to happen in Doomsday, because they're doing so many rewrites. It just seems like what if we had all these characters in one scene? Like, okay, great, what's the story? We'll figure it out after we're done shooting.
Oh, yeah. Is that what? Yeah. Are there a lot of rewrites? I haven't heard that.
Apparently, the script is not completed. They're writing on set as they film, and it has been. And
that's always been been a big way that they do it.
Like, it's been true for dialogue, right? Like, that's kind of like, even with Iron Man, they've written it like a Marvel comic, where they did the beats, they went through, and then day by day they'll create dialogue to match how the characters are performing. This seems like they're actively coming back. Okay, this beat didn't work. I have to go back and reshoot this entire day.
Uh-oh.
Plus, they're bringing a lot of the mutants in. They're bringing it's a very big, ambitious project. It's just,
It may be a
too
movie
much?
that's best seen inebriated.
Well, let's keep a little optimism, guys.
I'm
Come
hopeful.
on.
I love Doomsday. I love Doom. I love the idea of the Doom's Messiah complex getting the best of him leading to Secret Wars. Like that's a fun thing. But again, are you letting the weird control the story, or are you using the weird to encapsulate a good good storytelling, good character development? I mean, Ron, in our kind of as we get to end here, as someone who's also writing a space epic, and Beyond the Stars, you get this weird concept of the setting is weird, the premise is weird, and the characters, on the surface level, are probably going to be weird, right? It's all fantastical, but you have to find these grains of truth, these grains of realism to create compelling drama and storytelling within them that allows for the story to be successful in all that weird housing it. When I was writing Soul Ascendant, it was the idea of, embracing, inner strength, understanding your calling and your relationships and how you support other people. And I'm sure in Beyond the Stars, you probably also have to find some more grains of truth to help compel the characters in the story in a way that wasn't just letting the weird control it, but that allowed the weird to serve storytelling.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, Andrea had this idea in his head when he drew the sketches for who the principal characters were. I mean, he was basically, it's like the old, writing characters and looking for a story kind of thing. And that's when I came along and, inspired by those characters, wanted to know more about them. And what little he gave me, I began to flesh out. But I knew instinctively, and from the first few emails we exchanged, that he wanted them to have some depth of characters. He wanted motivation to be there, all those kind of things. So I had a guideline to follow to a degree, and knew that as we went along, I could flesh it out. I mean, I'm an old school comic writer in that I've early on learned that a lot of great characterization happens in the middle of wall-to-wall action. All right, you can really pull out what a character is when things are blowing up all around you. And so I just wanted to get into the heart of a plot that would test these characters, that would put them up against all kinds of dangers and threats and whatever. And I think working almost to the second or third issue, one of the characters that Andrea had illustrated was a female cyborg. All right. I mean, this is a woman who, was a warrior, had been in combat, had been wounded several times, and had limbs replaced, and part of her brain was hooked up to, it was a computer, and it's kind of things. And I saw an opportunity in one sequence, and again, this comes from being a product of things like Star Wars and Star Trek, where they're aboard a ship and they get beamed aboard this alien mothership, which is a big part of the mystery they're trying to solve. And when they find themselves waking up on the alien mothership, which has nobody on board, supposedly is run by this alien computer, right? This cyborg literally finds herself in 3 identities. Her partner wakes up on the floor, looks up, and there's 3 versions of her. There's a version of her as she is. There's a version of her completely human, and there's a version of her that's totally robotic. And she's befuddled because she's meshing all 3, just one mind. And at which point you hear the computer talking in the ship and saying, well, we had a problem identifying you. Who are you? Pick. And she chooses who she is now as the cyborg. and the story continues. And later in the next issue, when I had a beat where I can slow things down a little bit, her partner turns around and says, why'd you choose this? And she goes, because my past is my past. I don't want to be a robot. This is who I am. I'm moving forward. I'm happy with who I am. And it was something a little more extra than just a space opera and ray guns and whatever, okay? And as a writer, again, it's a case of knowing who your characters are and exploring them and finding out what they can tell you, and hopefully writing some things that readers are going to get a little surprised by, and get caught up and then hopefully enjoy the story that much more.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, that's not only is that like a beautiful moment, but I think that's also just like an excellent like example of exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, we're coming up on our last couple minutes here. So are there any other thoughts that anyone else wanted to pop in tonight before we sign off?
Except to say, weird is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We've given you tons of examples of it tonight, folks.
Absolutely. Okay.
And what's our theme for next week? Please.
So next week, actually, I misspoke in our personal group chat. I'm going to be in Bend the week of the 29th, but I'll be here next week. Next week, we'll be talking about recovering from rejection. Yeah, it's spoiler alert if you're creative. No is going to become your favorite word.
Bring plenty of Kleenexes next week.
Yeah. So
we're going to regale you with some really heartbreaking stories.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to be talking about how you, as a try not to take it too personally, but how can you also use those rejections hopefully as moments to grow and expand your craft to eventually get the.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So maybe after a couple of nights of not looking at the letter
out, folks. Here we go.
Yeah. Resist the urge to throw your manuscript into the trash. Okay. And this is also something because if you're an artist, colorist too, and you're submitting your portfolios, you're also going to get plenty of rejections too.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that on All No Lens. Make sure to check out Wednesday WAM on Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. to respective times, Eastern times. And make sure to head on over to funbycomic.com. Pick up your pre-order for Cape Town number 2. If you missed number 1, you can add that onto your order as well. And head on over to Kickstarter and pick up your order of Brother Bones. This is number 1. If you want to find an issue number 0, try scrounging through Ron's trash. But we'll be back
next
week.
That's where they ended up. All right.
Yeah. We'll be back next time. But until then,
hey.
Make plastic.
Make mine Silverline.
Hi, I'm Dave Dorman. Make mine Silverline.